Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Here I am. Hey, good morning, everybody. Wednesday. Welcome to Wednesday, August 14th, 2024. Big news today. I don't know what it is. But the big news is that we do have Greg Dworkin, who does know what the big news is. Lots of things being bandied about this morning. There is plenty of news. I don't know what's the big story. Hey, I don't know. I mean, one of the weird stories from yesterday, and I don't know how much we really need to spend time on it, but it is a funny thing. I guess, you know, these things can happen. If you're Donald Trump and you're running for president and you're credibly accused of dozens of sexual assaults, you've been adjudicated as having assaulted Jean Carroll to the extent that they're willing to actually say, yes, though he was not criminally held liable for it, he was civilly held liable for raping her. And, hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? And, you know, you have those problems. You are a creepy pervert. You live in a sex dungeon. You, I don't know, let's say, bought a beauty pageant so that you could walk into the changing room. And really, honestly, even if you bought a beauty pageant so that you could offer Bibles to people and have them pray before it, what are you doing buying a beauty pageant? Okay, well, that's, you know, a weird issue all by itself. All right, so you're this candidate. And you're not really doing a whole lot of campaigning because you're 150 years old and falling apart, and you're not very good at it, and you just want to talk about Hannibal Lecter, and everybody's heard it already, and people are shooting you. You know how it is. Anyway, so you have a campaign event in Montana, also, you know, dumb and indicative of maybe not all there, but okay. Montana, you know, there's people there. They want to vote. They want to see their candidates. Okay, so you make a plane, you get on a campaign plane and you fly to Montana, and things happen. There's mechanical problems with the plane, for instance, let's say, because that happened, and you need a new plane, at least just to get you to your campaign stop and then home again, and then they'll fix your plane and you'll be able to get your fantastic, lovely plane back again. You need to lease a plane from somebody. Do you have a list of people or sources for renting those planes, for leasing a plane that's a no-go zone, essentially, right? Do you ever say, Hamas, I will not rent a plane from Hamas or Hezbollah or the Iranian Revolutionary Guards or Hitler or anything like that? Like, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't really necessarily keep such a list because I don't do a lot of plane leasing, but I guess I would say to the campaign staff, you know, I have certain sensitivities. We have, as a campaign, certain sensitivities. And so would you, I guess, if you had such a list, or even if you didn't, should it be inherent, a part of the inherent understanding? Don't rent Jeffrey Epstein's plane. Like, this guy, talk about your cursed aircraft, right? He'd just been talking, by the way, I almost crashed in a helicopter, et cetera, et cetera. You would get on a Jeffrey Epstein, you would risk being struck by lightning. God knocks you out of the air. Like, I don't know how that didn't happen. But anyway, he leased a Jeffrey Epstein, a former, obviously, Jeffrey Epstein plane. And by the way, it turns out it wasn't the plane that everybody talks about. Like, it's, oh my God, the Lolita Express. That's crazy. Apparently, he had another plane that was actually known that way. And he had like 5 planes because he was insanely wealthy. It was stupid, the whole thing. And he had several. And nobody knows whether he did or didn't do any of these things with other planes, except that he's such a fantastical pervert that almost certainly he did. He was probably, if he was on a train, if he was in a rickshaw, he was trafficking somebody. So, yeah, probably that plane is haunted. And somebody suffered some horrific trauma on it. But Donald Trump rented it for the campaign. He slapped a Trump 2024 sticker on it and happily flew around. Now, you know, I mean, there's a limited supply of private jets out there. And yes, you could argue, and it'd probably even be right, that he just, look, I called a guy who had a plane. The guy bought a plane. Epstein's dead. He doesn't need the plane anymore. I'll buy the plane, and I won't sexually traffic anybody in it. But, well, you know. Yes, maybe. And he had no idea. And it may have changed ownership, maybe even more than once. And who knows about these things and who traces them? Well, somebody knows about these things and traces them. They just looked at the tail number and said, we know what plane that is. There are people who, of course, track that stuff all the time. You're going to get caught on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. So he did. I mean, he doesn't care. It's the least of his worries, Donald Trump. It's just kind of incredible. And also kind of incredible that even if it's a mistake, well, is it a mistake? I mean, only one candidate, I think, runs in crowds where if you turn to a friend and say, I need your private jet. And that happens in both parties. They borrow the private jets. This is a campaign donation of a private jet from unions, from donors, what have you. But only one candidate runs in circles where somebody would be shopping at a Jeffrey Epstein estate sale for a plane and say, that's fine. Yeah, I don't know if you can deep clean Jeffrey Epstein and his ghosts out of one of those planes, but I guess it worked because he didn't crash in that plane. So anyway, I'd be worried about that story. I would ask, but that's just me. I find that interesting and weird, and when you're doing a weird test on your candidate, that probably will be on the top of the list. There's a lot of small things that are not by themselves scandalous necessarily, or that are at least explainable, but that are definitely part of the pile of weird. For instance, as I brought to social media to some success yesterday, my first weirdness quiz for people, your ex-wife has died, the first of two ex-wives, but, okay, she's died, and now, where is she buried? Is your answer A, a cemetery, or is your answer B, your golf course? So if you answered B, you might be quite weird, old and quite weird. That might describe you. By the way, in looking that story up again, just to refresh my memory about it, apparently the news reports are that the area is now wild and overgrown and just not at all landscaped, which for a golf course is a little unusual. But don't go digging around there. That's the message, and which is also quite weird. Anyway, that's by no means the most important stuff for today. Greg Dworkin knows what that is, and he's collected it, and he's typing it at me. And so if I don't tell everybody he's here, it's just going to keep piling up. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning.
Oh,
it's funny. On Skype, there's the David Waldman chat, which I generally call in on and type all my stuff. But there's also one for me. I mean, the owner of Skype gets to have their own little name up there.
Okay, yes.
So unfortunately, I put all of my stories in my feed where you can't see it.
Did you like them?
I loved it.
No,
but,
right.
You can't see it, so I got to retype it and put it where you can see it, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, that is unusual. It is a little
But don't worry, there's a Raft O Stories still.
Good.
It's just that you can't see it. So I'll tell you about them instead.
Help, I can't see the raft. I'm drowning.
Yeah, well, we start off with the Pundit Roundup. And the theme of the Pundit Roundup today, which we may or may not spend a lot of time on, is that the press screwed up a leaked set of documents again because they have them, and more outlets have them, and more outlets are refusing to do anything about it.
Well, you know how it is with privacy.
Well, yeah, I suppose. But there's some intriguing stories about that. The Associated Press says news outlets were leaked insider material. They chose not to print it.
Right.
One prominent journalist, Jesse Eisinger, senior reporter, editor of ProPublica, suggested the outlets could have told more than they did. While it's true that past Vance statements, because most of these were about vetting J.D. Vance.
Oh, okay.
Most past statements about Trump are easily found publicly. The vetting document could have indicated which statements most concerned the campaign or revealed things the journalists didn't know. Once it's established that the material is accurate, newsworthiness is a more important consideration than the source, he said. I don't think they handle it properly. I think they overlearned the lessons of 2016.
Isn't that something?
Mark Jacob, who's former editor at the Chicago Tribune, said it's becoming harder and harder to understand why major media outlets aren't sounding a loud alarm about Trump's unhinged behavior.
Well,
and Michael Mann, the climate guy, says, well, it's only hard to understand if you assume they're acting in good faith.
Oh, that does complicate things. This batch of documents, it is amazing. Not only did they learn the lesson, not only did they overlearn the lesson, but they didn't tell anybody that they learned a lesson. We kept asking, have you learned this lesson in advance of the next test? And they said, no, we haven't. F you. But it turns out they have.
Complaining about the fact that people, meaning reporters, are complaining about the fact that Harris wasn't giving them enough face time. And
how so?
Isaac Bailey, reporter and academic, said, the problem is that we've become so arrogant that like nobody likes us and trusts us anymore. And you could see that from the time that they actually did talk to Harris, because Kamala came over at one of the rallies and approached the press off of her plane and
crazy.
Said, bring it. I'm here. Ask me questions. And what do they ask? Well, what'd you think of Trump? What'd you think of Trump's press conference? What do you think of Trump? What do you think Trump's wearing today? How do you, enough about me. How do you think about Trump? And she answered the questions and left and said, okay, it's enough. And if that's what they're going to ask her, why the hell should she give a press conference? So, some of the reporters themselves are starting to, play with the idea that, maybe we screwed up. Maybe we did screw up in 2016. But as you said, they've never had a reckoning about it. They never went back and said, yes, we screwed up. Here's why. Never. Yeah. And so that's why nobody trusts them now. And if they think that they're doing the right thing, maybe they are, maybe they're not. Maybe there's nothing newsworthy in it. Maybe it's just repeats of everything we said. It doesn't matter. Nobody trusts them. That's really the story, not what's in the documents.
I wonder if they if only there had been some opportunity for them to learn that they were not trusted by major presidential campaigns in between now and, say, 2016. One guy actually ran for president and would corral them in a pen in the back and turn the crowd on them. And tell them, go kill those guys.
One of the campaigns always lies, and they still haven't come to grips with that. They even have trouble saying that.
Yeah, which is crazy. Or that it's racist, and they have trouble saying that. It's racially tinged, the remarks that they make, but the guy's not
It's racialized.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting as explicit as you could possibly imagine.
Exaggerations.
Right. So, okay. And she might not be black, that's just, she might not be. She might not be.
That's a racialized statement, right?
Yeah, racially tinged. It was, there was a tincture of racisms, but not racism.
It's enough to trouble Susan Collins.
Deeply.
So Brian Beutler writes, Trump email hack is a moment of reckoning for him or the news media, and points out,
and
this is a quote from Dean Beckett, who was the Times editor at the time, executive editor. When we learn important things not to publish is a political act. The calculation cannot be, we're just not going to publish because that would screw up American politics. At that point, I'll go into business as a campaign advisor and not a journalist.
I don't think you're going to make it in that business.
Well, 2 election cycles later, says Beutler, you can be forgiven for wondering what the heck was that.
Yeah. All right. The history goes well beyond 2016 with the New York Times and their decisions. And, of course, that rings hollow, like in my memory of the 2004 discovery that the George W. Bush administration had been conducting all sorts of warrantless surveillance domestically and elected not to publish because it would have screwed up an election. It's amazing that they keep saying that they don't do that they don't make decisions that way. Yes, you do. But we learned our lesson.
You can go back to Kennedy and his illnesses that they never published, or his affairs that they never published.
But that was a different terror or something. I don't know. Yeah. That's true. They have always made. I don't see how you avoid that decision. This is decisions that they make. They're inherently political. Yeah, they do that. That's a dumb thing to say.
And that's why, Jay Rosen's Church of the Savvy View from Nowhere critique of the modern press is just so spot on because, when it's convenient for them, they claim neutrality. When it's convenient for them, they don't. When it's convenient for them, they are high-minded above the fray, and when it's convenient for them, they're not. And it all boils down to their own egos and their own access. And, it's not that a free press is bad. A free press is great. This particular political press is awful. And until they themselves admit they screwed up, Nobody's going to trust him.
That would be helpful, I think. I don't know how much trust it buys back.
I really can't wait to see what Peter Baker and Patrick Healy think of the race, because that'll tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
Those days were never, let alone gone.
Well, maybe that should be, it'd be interesting if their assignment was all, what do you think about Trump? What did you think about Trump's thing? You can't write anything other, no analysis of anything else. What did you think about his suit?
Maggie Haberman.
Yeah, you all have to do this. Okay, well, I'd like to know what the hell we found out. But, of course, I am also wary of falling into the trap of being handed
Why don't you just tell us
information.
What we have here is a vetting list for J.D. Vance and nothing else. Why don't you just say that, if that's what you have?
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Well, we also have Roger Stone's emails. Oh, really? Well, what's in there? Well,
no one cares about that. Yeah, I don't really understand that one. What's behind that? What does that screw up?
Right. Anyway, other news. Lots of other news.
I'll take some others.
Let's do just a brief piece on the primaries last night. It's Wednesday. It was Tuesday yesterday.
What are they doing waiting so long?
Look at some of the highlights of primaries.
Okay.
Well, Wisconsin had a big one, and they had a constitutional amendment up for grabs.
Oh.
And as Ben Wickler points out, the chair of the Democratic Party there, the very excellent chair, for years and years and years, Wisconsin tried to screw Democrats and Wisconsinites by rigging things. The way they did that was with the trifecta with the governor and Scott Walker, and majorities in the
third leg.
House and Senate there.
Yeah.
Whatever they call it in that state. Sometimes it's an assembly. But in any case,
it's called a wheel of cheese.
What they did is they would pass stuff and then just, muscle it through and then depend upon the Supreme Court to rubber stamp it, because in Wisconsin, the Supreme Court is incredibly and entirely political.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, the Democrats flipped the Supreme Court, got the governorship, and now it's a lot harder for them to do that. But they persist. And so now the way that they do it is they try to sneak through amendments to the Constitution that sound innocuous, but in practice turn out to be Republican favorite. For example, they had a couple of intentionally confusing, as Ben Wickler describes it, constitutional amendments engineered by Republican politicians to undermine the Democratic governor.
Oh, great, thanks.
And what these things did is they essentially said that because they were mad that Tony Evers helped the state during COVID by spending excess money, emergency money, set aside for emergencies. And COVID was an emergency. So he spent it on the COVID emergency. And they were really pissed because they wanted to use that money to decrease business taxes.
Oh, well, yeah, I could see how you'd be disappointed then.
So they did this intentionally confusing constitutional amendment that was designed to disallow the governor from spending emergency money, without legislator agreeing to it.
Oh, because why should he have any powers? Sure.
Right. They've already taken some of his powers away, so they wanted to take more. And this time, the Democrats are out there, along with Evers, Tony Evers, the governor, explaining to the constituencies what this was, why it was bad, why you should vote no.
Yeah.
Because most things pass. And people voted no. And they rejected it by a wide margin.
Just from telling them what was wrong with it?
Just telling them what was in it.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Isn't that nuts?
What a concept. All right. Well done. You know what? Maybe only Ben Wickler's state.
It might be a habit.
Yeah. Wickler's state, I would think that could happen. I'd be very surprised with some state Dem organizations about their abilities to do that, but that one's less surprising, I guess.
Yep. So Wisconsin voters, according to the AP, reject Republican-authored ballot questions that limit governors' power to spend federal money.
I sense, by the way, Tim Walz is at your place mowing your lawn. That's terrific.
Yeah.
Good to thank him for that.
My lawn, I didn't even ask him. My lawn looked a
like,
little shaggy, and Tim Walz just showed up and started to mow it. He is just so good.
He's
crazy
not yelling
what
a great neighbor he is.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, Donald Trump just yells at the kid that pushes the mower. Walz
Speaking of Minnesota, speaking of Walz, a lot to talk about him, but there was a primary yesterday. Matt McDermott reports. Last night, Republicans nominated Royce White as the U.S. Senate candidate in Minnesota, a far-right anti-Semitic Alex Jones fan who claims America's problems on the Jewish elite calls women too mouthy.
Are those related? Are Jews making women mouthy? That's two things.
It's one thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, well, it's all wrapped up.
Apparently,
That's great.
Jewish elite women are too mouthy, as far as I could tell. It's really hard to say, though.
The
we'll
Minnesota
have to have
Jewish women.
In detail. You should ask Mark
right.
Robinson over in North Carolina what's going on. He'll explain it.
Those two guys can get together. Terrific. I mean, it's like they are doing everything they can to Todd Aiken themselves out of the majority in the Senate. So I guess that's good. Not that I thought they had a great chance in Minnesota, but wherever they have, wherever they're nominating people, it seems like they want to have crazies. They're all weird.
So Minnesota senators are Amy Klobuchar, of course, and Tina Smith, and as Tim Walz is fond of saying on the stump, we got two women senators, and they're fantastic. So, it's bad. And then we had some local action here, which was kind of interesting. The Connecticut Republican Party has become very, very Trumpy, which is why they keep losing all the time. They lost their majority in the state Senate, so it's now a Democratic trifecta.
Great.
With Ned Lamont as governor.
All right.
And they had a Republican primary yesterday to try to figure out who's going to be cannon fodder and lose to Chris Murphy, but I didn't even pay attention to that because it doesn't matter who won. My understanding is that whoever the Republican Party endorsed, the other guy won. So we'll have to delve into that a little bit maybe tomorrow. But the one story that I want to concentrate on is Stamford, Connecticut, a local, that is to say, city council Democratic member whose name is Annabelle Figueroa.
Great. Okay.
Figueroa. And Annabelle Figueroa won a primary against another Democrat whose name is Jacobson.
Okay, Figueroa beat Jacobson.
So Figueroa beat Jacobson last time, and Figueroa is the incumbent, but the Democratic Party endorsed Jacobson.
Oh, I see.
They didn't like Figueroa. They felt Figueroa was a little bit too far out for them, and here's why. And here's the story. Stamford Democratic State Representative Annabelle Figueroa says, and I quote, "We cannot permit a person who is of Jewish origin to represent our community," end quote. And that was Jacobson, who she was running against, who she beat by a few points. So the primary was last night, and Jacobson basically won 2-1.
Okay, well.
So she got stomped.
Wow.
And then the story is here, I'm reading from the Stamford Advocate. Stanford Democrats call for Representative Annabelle Figueroa to resign from the DCC, that's the Democratic City Council, following anti-Semitic comments.
Yeah.
The Stanford DCC's executive board issued a statement Tuesday morning calling on Figueroa to resign after a video interview with the Hispanic International show about Jonathan Jacobson, who the party endorsed, came to light. And then it turned out one of her colleagues, who is a supporter of Figueroa, posted something very similar.
Oh, my goodness. What's happening?
So I think that it's bad. I mean, I don't want to make a light of it. I think what they were inarticulately trying to say is that there needs to be more Latina representation.
I see. Okay.
And you can't vote for non-Latinas and get that representation. I think that's what she was trying to say, but it didn't come out so nice.
Oh, no. Right. Well, yeah, that could use some workshopping.
So here's a quote. "I'm deeply sorry to those in the Stanford and Jewish communities that I've offended. I have multiple Jewish people working on my campaign.
Wow.
And anti-Semitism has no place in Stanford." She might as well just have added, and by the way, Kamala Harris is married to somebody Jewish, so, leave me alone. And no, that's not how it works. So then she added, there's a strong Latino community in the 148th district, and I will ensure their voice is at the table and never leaves it. That has nothing to do with religion. And as a bilingual speaker, I misspoke when describing my opponent's background. I'm deeply and sincerely sorry. So I'm glad she apologized. I take her word for it. She probably did just really, really screw up, but it's really bad, and she should resign.
Okay. Well, what about the other person? Wasn't there another one who also?
They're still sorting.
Still working that one out.
That's a recent.
Oh no, I like Hitler. You misunderstand. Oh well, okay. All right. So
and my friend said I agree with her that the Hitler's great. Well, wait a minute.
Yeah, right. No, you can't.
How come I'm the only one that has to resign?
What are you looking at me for?
And I'm trying to tell you I made a mistake. No, she didn't make a mistake. She meant it. Hitler's great.
Oh no.
So they have to. There's a lot they have to sort through there.
I see where they're going, but yeah. You gotta. Well, if you ever want to move up or run for state legislature, you're gonna have to figure it out a little better than that.
Yeah, but anyway, okay. All I can tell you is the Democratic Party in Connecticut takes the garbage out.
Yeah, well, okay, that's good news. I mean, your neighbor New York, where they have difficulty policing the activity inside the Democratic Party. So, okay, good. I'm glad that's straightened out. We got one more to straighten out. I assume that happens in the next day or so. Boy, okay, Annabelle Figueroa. Any relation to Ed?
I don't know.
Okay, just checking. I mean, Ed Figueroa seemed like a nice guy.
Well, he can pitch.
Yeah. So I really don't want to hold it against him. But, did he settle in Connecticut? We don't know. We'll have to find out. Okay, that's quite a story, and we'll keep an eye out for whether or not the other person eventually corrects along the same lines, I guess. Or comes to mow your lawn, perhaps, at some point.
Yeah, well, do not try this at home, folks.
Right. Not at Greg's home. Anyway, although you might enjoy having Abby around. Eventually they'll come and mow the lawn here, too. So there's no escaping it.
She's barking at Tim Walz, but we'll do some polling after the break.
Yeah. Okay, very good. 29% of people surveyed thought we should just stop and mow the lawn, and that's troubling. We'll give it some consideration after this.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Sounds like they moved around to the other side of the lawn, or maybe the neighbor's place now. So it was nice of Walz to stop by. He brought his dog as well, and we're all caught up.
Yeah, his dog and a cat, so he brought everybody.
Yeah, so the whole menagerie is here.
But, how could you not love Tim Walz? As a matter of fact, speaking of which, that's exactly what we have now. We have Tim Walz polling.
Perfect.
So we'll start with that.
Pole vaulting.
And let me just move this over here so you could read it. But it turns out Cam Easley had a morning consult poll out. Tim Walz has a net favorable rating of +5. Everybody else, even Harris, I think, is like -3, which is not bad, but the Republicans are a lot lower than that. Tim Walz' net favorable rating sits at +5 after week 1 of campaigning that saw his name ID double from 43 to 85. So the whole idea, nobody knows who he is. Well, everybody knows who he is now.
Yeah. Then that's
He's
the nice
guy
guy
who takes a picture of himself next to a giant Paul Bunyan statue and writes the caption that says, "This is a picture of me standing next to Paul Bunyan. I'm the one on the right."
Okay.
And you look at that and say, I love this guy.
+5. Yeah. Right. That's how people register this.
Out, favorable shifts are falling along predictable lines, but he's more popular than Vance was after week 1.
Well, come on.
And, of all voters, the favorables for Walz went from 18% favorable to 38. Unfavorables went from 11 to 33. But, the unfavorables are mostly among conservatives and Republicans. Everybody else likes them.
Yeah, well.
So that's how you get a +5. Meanwhile, Tommy Vietor points out that Semaphore had a poll of J.D. Vance. It says, presented with a list of options to describe Vance in August, the most common answers were conservative, anti-woman, and weird. The percentage calling him extreme shot up 13 points. And here's the statement.
Extremely weird.
Of the statements offered, participants were most aware of the childless cat lady comments, 50% of those surveyed saying they had heard of the remarks, and 55% saying they were bothered by them. I didn't hear of that, but it bothers me anyway.
Yeah.
Said 5%.
Well, okay.
Nobody told me about it.
Right. That would bother people.
Scoring worse, but less well known, a 2021 interview with Spectrum News in which he defended a Texas abortion law's lack of exceptions for rape and incest by suggesting pregnancies from such circumstances are inconvenient.
What is that? Inconvenient?
Yeah. If you get pregnant because of rape or incest, that's inconvenient for you, but you got to do what you got to do.
I see.
Have the baby even though you're 11.
Oh. All right. That's, less well known, but equally weird and difficult to
inconvenience 11-year-old girls.
Do. Right. Well, that will catch on, and people will hear more about that and become disturbed by it.
Well, 62% of voters said they were bothered Vance used the term inconvenient to describe pregnancies that stem from rape and incest, with 50% reporting it bothers me a lot.
Yeah.
So all I'm telling you is that people like Walz better than Vance, so when Vance attacks Walz's military service, doesn't go anywhere because they've already got their opinion of what they think about these two people.
All right.
And so if you want to attack somebody, you got to build yourself up first and then attack the other person. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, unless you're armed with something spectacular like a couch.
And the only thing that happened is Vance tore himself down and then started to attack Walz. And Walz says, I'm proud of my service, and the only thing I have to say in regard to J.D. Vance's own service in the military is thank you. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Finished.
Not very much either, but okay. Well.
But, I mean, there's nothing to say about
you?
that. Well, Vance tried anyway, but it didn't work, because nothing he's doing is working.
It is.
So, there's that.
Interesting. Yeah. And funny, too, that, as they ask all the things, what does this bother you about J.D. Vance? You can't ask about the couch because the couch thing isn't, it's not a factual event, so they don't ask. But 85% of people have heard and are bothered about the the childless cat lady thing. 95% of them have heard and are bothered by the couch thing, but they can't ask that because
95% have heard and are amused by the couch thing,
right.
And therefore they won't stop talking about it.
And they can't even get poll numbers on it because it'd be irresponsible to poll on this thing, right?
I was trying to poll, but every time I asked somebody about it, they just burst out laughing.
Yeah. Have you heard about the couch thing? Does it bother you? Not so much bother as entertain.
Yeah. Why do you keep asking me about the Ottoman Empire? I don't want to talk about that.
I thought we were supposed to be talking about the Roman Empire. That's crazy. But all right. They had couches, by the way, Romans. All right. Well, it's not a new invention. Yes.
G. Elliott Morris posts, Harris is approaching 3+3 in national polls.
Approaching 3+3.
Rivaling Trump's post-debate RNC high. She's up in Michigan by 3.4, Wisconsin by 3.3, Pennsylvania 1.7, Nevada 0.6, and tied in Arizona and Georgia. Harris's net fav is about -4 compared to -8 for Trump, -9 for Vance, and Walz is +8.
All right.
In the aggregate. I was telling you about a specific poll in Morning Consult where he was +5, but he's +8 in the aggregate. Walz is just really, really popular. And then Cook Political puts out their own set of polls this morning, and they have Harris up 48-47. In Arizona, they have Harris up 48-46. Georgia tied at 48. Michigan 49-46 Harris. Nevada is the only one that they have Trump ahead, 48-45, although Nevada, you have to add, is a really difficult place to poll. Just ask John Ralston. North Carolina, Harris, 48-47. Pennsylvania, Harris, 49-48. Wisconsin, Harris, 49-46. So on the whole, Amy Walters' response is, well, according to our polling, Harris is doing much better than people ever thought she did. But Trump is hanging around, and Democrats thought that he should be disqualified, and apparently that's not the case. And I would just add, yet. You know,
all right, yeah.
When you step back, and by the way, the Quinnipiac poll is out today sometime this afternoon, usually around 2 o'clock. Okay. And Monmouth is supposed to be polling today. Monmouth is interesting because they're an excellent pollster, but they stopped doing horse race polls. What Monmouth has done in the past couple of elections is just ask a question about what do you think about the candidates, which is actually more important because in the end you have people who have to decide who to vote for if they're going to vote at all. And Trump has arguably had the worst 3 weeks of a political campaign ever, even worse than Joe Biden's 2 weeks after that debate.
Yeah,
he can't campaign. He's incapable of going out and staying on message. He can't do it. He is so upset about what's happened because he thought he was going to, and I still think there's a lot of PTSD about having been shot at that he hasn't dealt with yet.
Well, you know, sure.
Which is understandable.
Yeah.
But, you know, that only applies to humans.
Yeah.
The thing is that he's so upset about Kamala Harris's crowd sizes that he's, again, claiming that it's an AI generated, it's not true sort of thing.
Yeah.
He's still trying to relitigate the 2020 election. He's, just not capable of sticking on message to the point where even Nikki Haley lectured him yesterday.
Well, that'll
and said,
go
listen,
well.
If we keep talking about what race Kamala Harris belongs to and whether or not we won the 2020 election and her crowd sizes, this is stupid stuff. It's dumb, and we're going to lose. Which is funny because Nikki Haley had already told Republicans that if we elect Donald Trump, he's going to lose.
Yes.
That was, I think, back in January. So, you should add, this stuff is so dumb, it's ridiculous. I'm embarrassed about it. That's why I'm voting for him. But nonetheless, she was right in January. And the problem isn't the polling per se, which is not great for Trump. He's hitting his top levels, and that's as far as he's going to get, and he's not going above that. The problem is the candidate is so deeply flawed that there's simply no way he's going to win this race.
Well,
he can't campaign. He's going to break down even more as Harris starts to get an even bigger lead after the Democratic National Convention.
Mm-hmm.
He's so upset. His campaign is trying to redirect him. He's supposed to have a rally in North Carolina at a relatively small venue so he could talk about economic issues. The campaign wants him to talk about inflation and the border, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's all they want him to talk about, nothing else. You should say nothing. Trump is incapable of talking about just that and nothing.
Like the late, great Hannibal Lecter.
He can't do it.
Yeah.
And so that being the case, it's not just the polls. It's that this is an incredibly flawed candidate who simply is not positioned to win. And the campaign can only do so much when the candidate themselves is so deeply flawed. So, I know he won in 2016. He didn't win in 2020. He's gotten worse since then. He's not the campaigner he was in 2016. He's not the fresh new kid as he was in 2016. He's not running against Hillary Clinton as he was in 2016. There's just so much that's not 2016. Plus, we have January 6th and a couple of felony convictions, and he's getting sentenced in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
So, I just don't see how he wins.
I don't want to see it.
You have to step back and say, well, according to the numbers here, yes, he could win. Not when he's this flawed.
Yeah. I mean, you must keep in the back of your mind, crazy things happened. That was 2016.
Yes.
That did happen. Could it happen again? Could
sure.
it? Yeah,
it could.
It could. Could it be?
But it's not
because
2016
it's not
anymore, folks.
Right. It's going to take a different set of circumstances to come up with a win, and given that he's added to his bag of tricks for creating those circumstances, insurrection, you're going to want to watch out. And of course, also looming in the background, yes, there's no way he can win. He can't get enough votes. He can't get enough electoral votes. There are people out there that are sitting in the wrong position in elected government who will say, I will just lie and say he won. It's going to take some straightening out.
Is he capable of stealing with it? Yes, absolutely.
You bet. Yeah, that has not changed. Right. So, okay. So, be vigilant and watch the right places, but your role right now, cast those votes, donate the dollars, tell the pollsters what you're doing. Okay.
Right. And
by those numbers,
Taniel summed up the state polling that Cook Political did, and I think it raises to me
Cook did it.
a point that you can't make enough. When Biden was running, it was close, but people felt like, he doesn't have it in him, and that's why we're going to lose. Not the numbers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're slipping a little bit, but close enough so that, it's within margin of error, and a good campaign at the end, bringing out the democracy vote, we can still win. That's what the Biden campaign thought.
That's what they were banking on? Yeah, okay.
All right. So plausible.
Yeah.
So then Harris gets in, and the people arguing that, no, you shouldn't switch, and if you did switch, you should have an open convention. Basically, we're saying there's no way Harris is going to just sail on these numbers and get a big boom. So we got to have some other plan B. Harris comes in, and as Taniel points out, strong state polling for Harris from Cook Political, with shifts of 3% to 10% in every state tested since May.
Oof.
All right. So that's the point. It's not just that Harris is now tied with the polls. She was coming from far back, and she basically has already caught them. And now to say that, okay, well, this is where the race is and it's not going to change from here is just as myopic as not seeing that Harris was going to surge. We got the DNC coming up starting Monday, and the concept and the idea that Harris can't get any higher than she is right here because reasons. It's stupid.
We've
what
never
reason
seen
do you
it.
have to think that it can't go up? Sure, it could go down, but it could also still go up.
Yeah, no one knows how to measure
the
this.
honeymoon for Harris is ending because she did all of this and now she's only tied. Well, that's like watching the 100 meters and watch a guy come from behind and catch you with 30 meters to go and thinking, okay, well, the race is over. He's caught that guy, but he can't possibly run even faster and finish the race ahead. Right. And then he goes on and finishes the race ahead.
Yeah. They should stop and do a
why
poll.
Don't you look at the race and watch it instead of assuming it's over because you said it is? Who said the honeymoon is over? What rule is it that says the honeymoon's over a week before the Democrats even have their convention?
There is no rule. The rule is the opposite, that honeymoon
and then
comes after
you have
the
your
convention.
honeymoon after that, and how long does that last? Well, it's going to be the end of August, and early voting starts mid-September. Who's to say the honeymoon is going to end?
Yeah,
but more to the point, who's to say
late.
she can't go any higher than where she is right now? Why are you even suggesting that? That's crazy.
I don't really know. We've not seen. I mean, this is a dramatic turnaround and a huge rise in the polls very quickly, so they might be thinking, how long can that last? But we've never seen this situation before.
Maybe gone by December.
Yeah, that's true. It will probably have dissipated by then. Maybe, yeah. I don't know. They don't know anything. They don't have anything to go on. But I guess they sort of think these things last a week.
You tell us why you think that.
Yeah. Well, that would be a good column. That's true. I mean, why do people think that wouldn't be an interesting column? Tell us about how you come to this conclusion and debate it a little bit. I mean,
Before you get
I would understand
too
that.
excited and too euphoric about what's going on, let me remind you what happened in 2016 where Hillary was leading and then she didn't win. That's nice, but there's absolutely nothing whatsoever that's like 2016 right now.
Yeah, but that would be something you could engage with at least and say, all right, well, but what about this? As opposed to, well, this is the way I have these feelings. Well, not interested.
Here's a better way to put it. While 2016 showed us that somebody who's ahead might wind up in the end losing, see Mike Dukakis.
See every campaign ever.
This is not like any of those things, and we are completely new and uncharted territory here, and we don't know what's going to happen next. Why don't you just say that?
Yes, you could certainly say this is a unique case.
Because that's true. You don't know what's happening. And the more you try to tell me that you know what's happening next, the more I think you don't really know what's going on now, let alone what's happening next.
I don't know why they don't think it would be a very interesting column to say
by traditional
analysis this would happen.
Well, you can't be excited. That would mean you'd be excited about Harris. I mean, you're taking
what
sides.
Are you doing?
You can't do that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's funny, too. They love that sort of process, and they love the horse race and everything, and the unique angles. And here's the most unique horse race ever.
Yeah, we can't talk about that. It benefits one side.
Well, then that's not true. The other side could make the same decision.
What's going on, and that's why it's so frustrating.
Yeah. Well, what can I tell you?
We can't benefit that side.
Yeah, it's only happening there. We can't say it because then they would get the benefit of the thing that they did. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess maybe that's why Trump was sure if he shot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue. They can't say that. That would only benefit the other side. If they reported that I shot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue, that'd be bias. I don't know. I don't get it. It seems like the natural storyline for them. Look at this anomalous thing. We should absolutely latch onto that and talk about it forever. I could see why the political news cycle being what it is, and you're wrapped up in it and living it and breathing it like some of these columnists and reporters and pundits are. I think they think honeymoons last for a week because a week feels like an eternity to them. But I mean, they also must know, usually there's a post-convention bounce. When's that convention? It's still coming. Well, there can't be any more. How could she possibly make any more gains with a week-long network television commercial telling everybody how great she is? Why would that impact anything? Of course, it's going to happen. You could say it's going to be a bounce. It's going to come back down. Traditionally, that has always happened. That may or may not happen for this because of the weirdness. But as you point out, it will only start to dissipate once ballots have been mailed and people start to return them. So, I mean, that's why that's my guess as to why was the convention scheduled so late, especially when we later found out that Republican secretaries of state were going to try and, come up with reasons to use that to disqualify Biden from the ballot. Why would you risk such a thing? Well, one of the answers is the honeymoon lasts until the ballots are out. Right. That's pretty good.
This is Anand Giridharadas. I'm mangling his name. I apologize in advance.
Okay.
Writing on Substack in the.inc. That's his That's his blog.
Got it. All right.
Give our people back, he says. The emotional undercurrent of the Walz phenomenon, and too long didn't read. Basically, what he says is the thing that makes Walz so lovable is he really does remind you of your dad or your uncle. He's an older white guy who's just happy, and he does mow your lawn.
Yeah.
And people need this.
Car.
And other people have said this. I told you about the liberal women who were on TikTok saying, "I love this guy. He reminds me of my dad that I lost to Fox News." And Anna's making the point there's just something deeply connective about that to people that is in fact true.
Okay.
Again, that's another reason why you can't attack him for his military service and why it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's and I don't know. It's interesting. A lot of people are probably surprised to even find that he even has the military background because he's just so lovable and jolly guy.
Yeah, and he's not really, running on that. Some of the Jason Kandar and some of the other folks ran on their military background. John Kerry did. He's running on being a coach.
Yeah. He's not field stripping rifles.
Which is an even more respected position in middle America than veterans.
Yeah, that's true. We pay him better, that's for
Friday
sure.
Night Lights.
Right. It's a big deal, and it works. And, by the way, I just wanted to say something about it as I was watching or looking over all this. The pundits marveling at how the meteoric rise, I've never understood the phrase, but the meteoric rise of Kamala Harris in the polls and these incredible gains, and gosh, it's got to come to an end at some point. And nobody ever doing anything like that. But I guess I was thinking of how good does that vice presidential selection look now in terms of well, I mean, I don't know if Biden felt in his bones somewhere that she was just capable of that sort of, national phenomenon, or whether it was the circumstances of following his debate performance that did it all by itself. But, I guess he's got to be feeling pretty good about saying, out of the field of people I had to choose from, I chose her, and there were people who wondered, what the hell are you doing? And now she's gaining 10 points in each state. That's pretty amazing. It's a little combination of everything, I think. But
these are August 2024 numbers. But I'm trying to look up exactly when this was done. These are top lines from the August 2024 poll that Cook Political put out, likely voters among 7 swing states. And I mentioned that Nevada is particularly difficult.
Yeah. But I know in the last couple of days we've twice said they were tied, and now she's up 0.6. So, okay, something. Yeah. But you're trying to figure out when.
I'm trying to figure out when exactly this poll was done. So I got to scroll all the way to the bottom so I can see the methodology here.
This is worth doing.
I don't know, but I don't think it was like yesterday, is what I'm saying. They released it today.
Yeah, well, it's got to have some lag,
I don't know when the poll itself was taken. Point being, if she's doing this well, and that was a week ago, she might be even doing better this week.
Yes. There's a little lag, right? So we might find out. Of course, I suppose you could argue, well, now she's beginning to come back down, and you just don't know it yet. Well, maybe.
Et cetera, et cetera.
I don't think so. I mean,
part of the problem
talking about couch stuff. So, yeah. I think weird works. It's catching on. They're certainly doing nothing to shed that.
So the poll was done from July 26th through August 2nd.
Wow. She was not even really... it began polling. Was she even secured in the job, in the spot in 26?
She hadn't gotten the official nomination. It was after July 21, so Biden had dropped out, and she was going to be the nominee.
Yeah.
But they started on July 26th. They finished on August 2nd.
By then they were ready.
Which is 2 weeks ago. They finished 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
Right. And they started polling about 3 weeks ago. So it's just out today, but it's something of a slightly dated poll. I'm just saying. So, well, how do we know her numbers aren't right? Well, this is where she was 3 weeks ago. How do you know where she is now? And it's still a big move. And that's why I'm saying, don't discount the idea that, she might even be higher than this.
That's right. You know how it is with Heisenberg and uncertainty. It could be anywhere. But this is the general area where we think she might be.
Right. Anyway, she's going to wind up campaigning in North Carolina. There'll be a rally, I think, at the end of the week, and Trump has one at the beginning of the week. We'll see whose crowd size is
North
bigger
Carolina.
and how Trump reacts to that.
I guess
and the only reason it matters is because of how Trump reacts to that. And then...
what do you think about how Trump reacts to that?
I don't think that he's going to be in a very good mood, and I think he's going to talk about Hannibal Lecter and a whole bunch of other stuff more.
I want to ask
the next thing he's going to say
Kamala Harris
is Kamala Harris doesn't exist. She is a hologram from the holodeck from Star Trek.
That's next. Yeah, it's Joe Biden in disguise. Right. Don't buy it.
That's the other
Mission
thing.
Impossible.
Joe Biden is going to have a coup, and he's going to wind up taking over the party again at the Democratic National Convention, and on the day he comes on the stage and says, Kamala Harris doesn't exist, it was a hologram, I'm the real Democratic candidate, he's going to rip off his mask, and it's going to turn out to be Barack Obama.
Oh, and it's going to be super unpopular, and we're all going to leave and join MAGA. That's probably the answer he's looking for. This is, I guess that's the next step, right? But sleepy Joe Biden from his deathbed is able to do all this fantastic stuff.
I can't believe I'm losing to this guy.
Yeah, considering master of disguise, master of intrigue, international super spy, I guess. I don't know what else to say, but he's a formidable candidate if he can pull all of that off. And, okay. And, I do like that we find out that he's thinking about that Biden is going to pull a coup because, as we know, every Republican accusation is a confession. I mean, they confessed to the coup thing on January 6, 2021. They televised it. The coup was televised. So, I guess, all right, he's got plans to try it again, and nobody's interested, and whatever. But I love the AI, blaming it all on AI. It's very, very hot right now. The kids love to talk about it being, and we're going to put out an NFT of their AI faking crowds or something.
New poll just out.
Oh,
Florida,
2 weeks ago. FAU.
Florida American University.
Luigi, yes.
Donald Trump, 47.
47.
Kamala Harris, 45.
All right. Where?
Florida.
Florida. Wow. FAU.
For Trump in Florida. Mark Caputo, who knows Florida, says Harris is closing the gap on Trump in Florida, her best showing yet. So far, the Trump campaign isn't planning to play defense here the way they are in North Carolina, I would add. But that could change depending on its internals. A prior thread of mine on that below.
Cool. Spend money. Go ahead.
And I haven't seen his thread below. Rick Scott is leading Debbie McCarcel Powell 47-43, which is pretty small. The legalized marijuana amendment, yes 56, no 29.
Sounds like
government restrictions on abortion, yes 56, no 21. I think there's a 56% threshold.
56?
No, there's a 60.
60. Yeah, maybe. I mean,
yes needs 60, no needs 40.
For all of them?
Legalized marijuana, 56-29, you need 60.
Oh, boy. Well, you know, they're famously motivated people. I mean, really, actually true, about the marijuana legalization. So while they're there, they'll probably vote on the rest of it, too.
But on abortion, 23% are undecided what they're going to do. So all I'm saying is that there's a couple of things on the ballot that may get people out to vote that don't normally vote. And if it's really Trump-Harris 47-45, you know, at the very least, Harris can claim that Florida's in play and make Trump spend there.
Yeah.
I mean, that campaign, the Trump campaign, from a tactical point of view is in trouble. And from a practical point of view, given that their candidate sucks and is falling apart, is in big trouble.
Yes. And he won't leave
the house. But don't forget
the
tactical part of it, the campaign's in trouble too. They can't straighten them out because they've got too many fires to put out. Now they've got to put out North Carolina. They've got to put out Florida. While they're doing that, are they really paying attention to Pennsylvania and Nevada?
No. I mean, I don't see how they can.
We're going to put New Jersey in play this year, and Virginia.
Oh, please.
And maybe Minnesota.
Sure. I mean, I guess they think so.
No.
The fact that Florida's in play and he's, I guess, still ensconced. Is he at his Bedminster course these days, or is he still based out of Mar-a-Lago? I don't know. I haven't really seen that kind of coverage of him lately, which is terrific. But I guess I was going to say that you don't need to convince, with good reason, Donald Trump to stay at home in Florida. And now that he has good reason, maybe he will. That would be fantastic. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're staying in Florida because it's a swing state and we have to stay on the ground here and do our best. It would be interesting to know. I'm not out looking for it either, but I don't know. It just all of a sudden sort of dawned on me as I was discussing with Greg right up until the break and then through the break. So you were not privy to it, but I'm going to I'll recap it here. So Donald Trump, I'm used to seeing the kind of coverage of Donald Trump wherein or where from I am left with no doubt about his location. I mean, it's not an important thing, relatively speaking, but usually, I know habitually he has spent his summers at the Bedminster golf course in New Jersey, where Ivana is buried. Although I understand the gravesite not been well maintained. Tim Walz may come over and mow the lawn there just to try to clean things up. Although I thought he had goats for that. Didn't he have a herd of goats that was supposed to maintain that sort of area? And maybe they won't to eat there. They think it's haunted. I don't know what. Anyway, apparently it's unkempt these days, as local reporters say. I don't know who checks up on these things. But anyway, I'm used to hearing just casually, mentions that he's in Bedminster and operating out of there. And I haven't been hearing that, which I guess is, I'm glad for that small mercy. We're just not covering Trump in the same way, such that I know where he's summering. But I don't know. I thought maybe he'd be at Pervalago, like as a campaign headquarters kind of a thing. It's hot and all, but he stays indoors. He doesn't care. Anyway, I thought it might be interesting, and maybe going into the fall, if Florida is a battleground, like, you wouldn't have to do too much to convince Donald Trump. I mean, that's a convenient excuse for him to latch onto and say, no, I have to stay home and fight for Florida. By which I mean go to the buffet at Pervalago a lot and try to get in the news that way. And isn't that a sort of a long-standing tradition in America, the front porch campaign? Back in the days before traveling campaign shows, you would actually do that, I think. 1800s, I guess, is what we're talking about. Candidates were so important, and travel, across country, such an infrequent occurrence and so difficult to do and relatively pointless, that the press would just come to the candidate's front porch. He would come out and speak a little bit each day, and then they would report stuff, and you know how it is. And back when getting the news once a week was okay. Anyway, just wondering about that. So, all right, on to other crazy stuff that some of which Greg mentioned. I put aside this HuffPost story about the Republican wackadoodle candidate nominated for Senate in Minnesota that Greg mentioned, Royce White, apparently an ex-NBA player, not one that rings a bell with me, but that's quite an accomplishment all by itself. Maybe they figured that would carry him across the finish line, or that he would be popular enough because ex-NBA that they could, we posted a decent showing. We got into the 40% range and lost to longtime popular incumbent Amy Klobuchar. But Republican, apparently he said things along the way, and maybe they weren't counting on that. Republican who said women are too mouthy wins Republican Senate primary in Minnesota. Ex-NBA player Royce White has a history of incendiary remarks about women, Jewish people, and others, according to Sarah Boboltz, I guess. Is that how we're pronouncing that one? Sorry, Sarah, if we got it wrong. Royce White, is that how we're pronouncing it? That's what it looks like. A former NBA player and current devotee of ex-President Donald Trump, won the Minnesota Republican Party's Senate primary on Tuesday. White had secured an eyebrow-raising endorsement from the Minnesota GOP back in May, although he was certain to face formidable odds if he managed to challenge Democratic incumbent Senator Amy Klobuchar on November 5th. And now he will manage to do that, apparently, unless, he drops out and they substitute someone else for some strange reason. The basketball player, once hailed for progressive mental health activism, and I guess needs maybe a little more himself, led Black Lives Matter protests in Minneapolis after the death of George Floyd. That'll also likely earn you progressive bona fides. But more recently, White has made a name for himself with inflammatory comments about women, Jewish people, and the LGBTQ community, leaning into conspiracy theories popular in far-right corners of the internet. White now counts among his allies Steve Bannon, who is in prison. The Trump advisor turned felon, I think they have the order wrong there. Felon turned Trump advisor, actually, but then turned felon again. And Alex Jones also turned felon, or at least turned bankrupt a-hole. The far-right showman who spread lies about victims of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting and now owes their families $1.5 billion. Oof. As recently as Saturday, White guest hosted Bannon's War Room show since he's in jail. Bannon had asked White to be with him when he surrendered to authorities in July for defying a congressional subpoena, an act that prompted White to praise Bannon as an American hero, according to the Associated Press. But did he go? Apparently not. Last year, White said on Bannon's show that women have become too mouthy. That's a new thing, I guess, he's just discovered, to say about women. No one has ever thought of that line before. And look, if you're looking to infuriate women, you want to come up with something new and exciting. Mouthy, uppity might be something you want to try. Anyway, there's a whole world out there waiting to be explored of insulting women. Where do we leave off in this guy's catalog of idiocy? Right, it became women have become too mouthy. I've just learned this. As the black man in the room, I'll say that, White added. Again, it's always difficult when somebody's black and talking about being black, but his name is White. It's confusing and weird to read aloud, but when you see what's enclosed in quotes, it all gets straightened out. As the black man in the room, I'll say that, White-headed. I don't know why a black man had to say that, but I guess, I don't know. Well, anyway, in June, he doubled down on the mouthy label with multiple social media posts. His name-calling seemingly knows no bounds. It's hard to know bounds, but I could introduce you to a few if you like. White also labeled several women, I guess particular women. CNN's Caitlin Collins, House Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. He didn't mean this about her when she was House Speaker, I guess. And former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, along with Dr. Anthony Fauci, not a woman, whose pro-vaccination messaging White rejects. Well, I see where we're going with this. And it's the sort of thing that I guess it's easier to get away with in print than radio. And I said yesterday we were going to try and be a little bit more liberal in our allowances for certain things that were previously labeled by the kids. They used to say cuss words if you're from the South. This one still censored. Let me see if I can lead you along here. White labeled several particular women and Dr. Anthony Fauci as this word, which would definitely get you a censoring horn. It begins with a C, and it's one that people don't like to hear a whole lot. He has, and that the British seem perfectly fine with for some strange reason. And this is the reason we separated from them. We fought a Revolutionary War over this, folks. No, that was at the heart of it. They didn't want to write it down in the Declaration of Independence because of how offensive it was. But, anyway, that's not really true. He has also attacked individual women on the basis of their appearance, which is very popular to do, and once said the LGBTQ plus movement is, quote, the brainchild of radical feminists and their cucked men. They love talking about cucked men. It's a very weird obsession for them to have. They love saying it over and over. You're a cuck. He's a cuck. The other one's a cuck. It's a weird word, and they just love saying it for some reason. Forming it in their mouths is a huge thrill to them, and that's odd. But we're open to that because, we love all kinds. Anyway, since securing his party's endorsement, White has had to fight back against accusations of anti-Semitism. I can't believe it. That's crazy. As news outlets pointed out that he complained about the Jewish lobby last year, and wrote in 2022 about quote, a group of Jewish elite that tends to be secular in belief, so culturally Jewish, and corrupt in political practice. But to what end? If they're Jewish but not Jewish, religious but not religious, I don't know. Is it supposed to be pro-Israel maybe? Calling White anti-Semitic, the Republican Jewish Coalition endorsed his opponent, Joe Frazier. Probably not the Joe Frazier we're thinking of, just as Ed Figueroa, probably no relation to Anna Figueroa there in Connecticut. But they endorsed Joe Frazier. Well, down goes Frazier as White secures the nomination, I guess. You can't be, he says, anti-Semitic when you pray to a Jewish carpenter every morning for salvation. Jesus is king, White claimed. And as it happens, anti-Semitism and fervent Christianity do sometimes go hand in hand, Jewish carpenter or not. Well, let's see. White's grandfather, Frank White, spoke about his grandson's turn toward extremist politics in a story by Mother Jones's Eamon Whalen in 2022. This is an interesting turn of events here. For all the people who thought that they lost their grandfather to Fox News, imagine being a grandfather who lost his grandson to Fox News. That would be unusual. I'm proud of my grandson, but do I agree with his politics? No. he told the outlet. He told me, "Hey, Grandpa, I'm going to be on Steve Bannon's podcast." I said, "You're a effing idiot." Now, I mean, that may have been the internal dialogue, but he said, "Do you know who Steve Bannon is, man?" All right, well, there's no way I can support my grandson supporting the GOP. And in essence, Trump, he continued. This is a guy who wants to be a dictator. Trump, I mean, maybe white too, but think about what that means. You're a person of color. Do you think you fit in his plans? Grandpa's got his head screwed on straight. I hope he's a Minnesota voter. So, all right, an interesting, you know how it is. One, it's interesting that there's another Mark Robinson type out there. It's weird that they keep doing, Republicans keep saying, let's do outreach to the black community by nominating a black candidate for office. And, not always. There's certainly black candidates who are like, no, I'm going to campaign as a traditional, right-wing Republican. Right? Tim Scott's able to do it. But at the same time, you got your Mark Robinsons and now your Royce Whites and, a few others floating around out there as well. So, all right. It's of interest. Anyway, let's see. Other things that I wanted to share with you. Oh, yes, right. Following up on stories that we have discussed in the distant past, not too distant past, post-2020, among the people we read about and that we, among the genre of people we mentioned in passing earlier in the show, people who have occupied elected office of some importance in the ordinarily ministerial acts necessary to certify the vote for anything in certain areas are occasionally Trumpy wackadoodles who say, I don't care what reality is, I don't care what the numbers say, I don't care how many votes were cast for his opponent, I'm going to certify, if I'm going to certify anything in this election, it's going to be certifying Donald Trump the winner. Such a person, in the form of Tina Peters, the Mesa County clerk from Colorado, has made our radar before and makes it again today because she's guilty, according to both Colorado Public Radio and the Washington Post. I have two similar reports on this. Shall we go with the local authority on this one? Sure, why not? Even though, if you don't believe them, you can always turn to the Washington Post. I don't know if that's going to help you with, these are people I don't believe, but you can believe this news. Bente Birkeland and Tom Hesse, does he say with the at the end? Hess, perhaps, are reporting this for CPR News. And you'll never guess where you find it. CPR.org. Tina Peters, guilty. And I want dramatic music behind that. Even though there's no mystery involved and there was no doubt about her guilt, but it was just a matter of time. And, well, that time has now passed. Former Mesa County clerk convicted on 7 charges. That's not all the charges she faced. She beat some of the charges. I'm not certain which, but I guess we'll find out. Donald Trump didn't when he was put on trial. And by the way, it is now 5 weeks, 35 days, counting the rest of today, until it becomes the date of his sentencing, which I think is September 18th. So there you go. Anyway, 12 Mesa County jurors, that's the number you put on a jury, found Tina Peters guilty of 4 felonies on Monday. This is an interesting way of putting it. And they said 7, I thought, in the headline, subheader. Headline, there is no subheader. 7 charges. Why 4 here? I don't know. Let's see if we can make sense of it. Perhaps there's an update. And why they start with how many jurors there were, I don't know. 12 Mesa County jurors found Tina Peters, guilty of 4 felonies on the first day of the week, Monday, after a lengthy criminal trial, marking yet another conviction tied to post-2020 election conspiracy theories. Don't fall for Trump conspiracy theories. They will get you in trouble and probably convicted. Everything Trump touches dies. Don't you should definitely not try to lay hands on his thoughts or theories. That's his weak spot, thinking. So I wouldn't go along with it. Peters faced a total of 10 criminal charges related to her role in helping a man gain unauthorized access to voting equipment during a secure software update in May of 2021. Of course, every Republican accusation being a confession. They were found guilty of tampering with election equipment, which is exactly what they were accusing Democrats of doing. And what do you know? They landed themselves in trouble. The county's voting machine's passwords and copies of its hard drive were later posted online by people trying to undermine the validity of the election system. The jury deliberated for around 4.5 hours on Monday afternoon. That's it. Before reaching their decision, which was read out to a packed courtroom just after 5 p.m., that means the case was not particularly complicated in their minds. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Peters was found guilty of 3 counts. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Of attempting to influence a public servant and 1 count of conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation. She was also convicted of first-degree official misconduct, violation of duty, and failure to comply with an order from the Secretary of State, all misdemeanors. The jury acquitted Peters on 3 counts. Criminal impersonation, although she was guilty of conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation, but then something happened. She didn't pull the trigger. I don't know what. Conspiracy to commit how did that happen? I guess she had 2 counts of conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation, got convicted on 1, acquitted on the other, and identity theft was the other acquittal. How did we get here? Tell us, Colorado Public News. The investigation into Peters' actions began almost exactly 3 years ago. 3 guilties and 3 years ago, when images taken during a secure update, including of machine passwords, surfaced online. Hey, someone's done something wrong. We should investigate and prosecute that person. Well, now we're done. They're guilty. At the same time, a copy of Mesa County's hard drive was displayed and discussed at a cyber symposium hosted by Mike Lindell, the MyPillow CEO, who has been at the center of false claims that the 2020 presidential election was stolen. Investigations by the 21st Judicial District in Mesa County, as well as the Colorado Secretary of State's office, found that Peters began meeting with people concerned about election integrity in April of 2021, prompted both by the outcome of the 2020 presidential election and the results of the spring 2021 Grand Junction municipal election. Peters has said the victory of a number of more moderate candidates made her believe something was amiss with the county's Dominion voting systems machines, as opposed to her being out of touch with the pulse of her neighbors and trends in voting in that area. And she decided to go to prison rather than admit she was wrong about all of that. Some of the facts of the case have never been disputed. Peters admits that in May of 2021, she used the identity of a person from the locality, is spelled like Fruita. Is that Fruita, maybe? Fruita. I don't know how it's pronounced locally, but someone can tell me, I'm sure. She used the identity of this person, Gerald Wood, to give a different man, whose name is Conan Hayes, a self-described data expert from California. Conan Hayes describes himself that way. Conan got access to county voting equipment by pretending to be Gerald Wood, both to copy its hard drive and a few days later to attend a secure update of the machine's software. Hayes is a retired surfer. That's the expert. Well, I'm a data expert. Are you? What's your experience? Surfing. A retired surfer with ties to Lindell and his campaign of spreading falsehoods about the country's election system, which he learned about while he was surfing, I guess. This case was a simple case centered around the use of deceit to commit a fraud. Prosecutor Robert Shapiro told the jury during his closing arguments on Monday, it's not about computers, it's not about election records, it's about using deceit to trick and manipulate others, specifically public servants who were simply trying to do their job. He said, the update of the voting machine software is a very sensitive, secured, and confidential process that Peters violated. Well, what did the prosecution and the defense argue during the trial? I'm glad you asked. And so is Colorado Public Radio, because they say the prosecution spent substantial time trying to show that Peters knew she'd done something wrong, based on her reaction when the security breach started to come to light. 2 former staffers recalled Peters telling them, I like it. 2 former staffers recall Peters telling them, I'm effed. And that's kind of the way it's printed. There's one big dash. I'm F long M dash D. I don't know whether that's supposed to be she said the words, which gets you bleeped even still here on this show. But anyway, I'm effed. One added that Peters told her she, quote, she was, quote, going to jail. Well, she sees that part clearly. Peters also allegedly told staff involved with the plan to get burner phones and not say anything. The defendant was a fox guarding the hen house. It was her job to protect the election equipment, and she turned on it and used her power for her own advantage, said prosecutor Janet Drake. Well, not a very good advantage. She's going to jail. Peters' defense team painted her as a clerk who broke no rules by copying her equipment's hard drives. They say everything she did was within her authority to preserve election records. In other words, by the way, can I just clarify for you that they're claiming that what she did was an official act. Okay? I mean, you should mind that, right? There's no adjudicated immunity for county clerks and their official acts in the same way that there supposedly is under the Supreme Court precedent of 2 weeks ago, or whatever, how long it's been. 15 minutes worth of precedent saying that presidents enjoy that immunity. But there will be some, I mean, that's of some importance. They're basically saying that what she did was legal and within her rights as the elected official, an official act here. And the sort of thing that had the president of the United States ordered it would be arguably, in front of this Supreme Court anyway, an official act from which they were immune, which is amazing because other people go to jail for it. How weird. Anyway, they say everything she did was within her authority to preserve election records. There's also no dispute about what was going to happen when the state got in there to do the trusted build. They were going to erase all the records, said defense attorney John Case during his closing remarks. And that's what apparently worried Peters. Well, if they erase all the records, then I won't be able to prove the thing I believe is true. Except that even with the records, you would not be able to prove the thing you believed was true because the thing you believed to be true was in fact false. You just trusted the people who told you that, well, we don't have any evidence for it, and in fact all the evidence that exists points in the other direction, but that's because it's all fake, just like Kamala Harris's AI-generated crowds. You know, once you get somebody to believe that there's a massive conspiracy to fake all the evidence that appears to make it look like some certain thing which is in fact a basic truth is true, once you get somebody, you know, into the idea that they have the insider information that everybody else is missing, you can convince them of almost anything, and it happened here. That's what happened. I mean, if you want to make her into a sympathetic figure, you're going to have to say she was duped. You can't stand there and say she was right the whole time. You're going to lose. And they did. The Secretary of State's office and Dominion Voting Systems dispute the idea that the files updated during the secure update constitute election records at all under Colorado law. Anyway, they also say there are other ways to work with the state to preserve any information on the machines prior to the update. Right, that's an interesting dispute to have. It's not an election record. The software that runs the machine is not considered election records. The votes that were cast, those are election records, but the software used to count the votes is not. But, well, you know, if you believe that the whole thing was rigged and there was software in there that said it doesn't matter who votes for what, this is the result you're going to have to spit out, I could see why they think that's an important record to preserve, but that didn't happen, so sorry. The 9-day trial was rife with discussions of relevance and admissibility, often leading to lengthy delays as attorneys argued outside the presence of the jury whether or not the trial could wade into national conspiracies around Dominion voting systems. It cost a lot of people a lot of money. They lost in those suits. and, of course, the election results. The defense team also raised the claim with no evidence, and that's important in court, that Hayes was somehow a government informant, or that Peters believed he was an informant whose identity needed to be protected. That's why they faked it and told everybody he was somebody else. In closing, Case again brushed up against those lines, drawing numerous objections from prosecutors, because you can't talk about things that there's been no evidence for in your conclusion. He mused to jurors about why the jury was not shown the video that was leaked online and why Hayes wasn't subpoenaed for the trial. But, of course, they hadn't heard about that because the judge ruled it inadmissible as evidence. So he tries to sneak in inadmissible evidence in closing arguments. That's not going to work out so well with him with professional licensing folks either. Well, why didn't they produce him? He's the key to the whole case. But they didn't have the guts to call him as a witness, Case said. They knew what he would say. I don't think so. Throughout the trial, the defense spent considerable time trying to show that Wood was in on the plan to let Hayes use his ID badge and name. They emphasized messages the defense said came from chats on the encrypted Signal or app Signal. All right, always at the center of upstanding activity. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. There's still a little bit more, and I mean, this is a good and thorough follow-up, and I wondered what had happened to Tina Peters, and now we know. So, yes, as it turns out, according to Colorado Public Radio's report on the conclusion of the case, throughout the trial, the defense spent considerable time trying to show that the guy whose identity they stole, was it Gerald Wood, was in on it, and he wanted to let this retired surfer turned claimed data expert Hayes use his ID badge and name. They emphasized messages that the defense said came from Signal, the app Signal, which is where all the upstanding individuals go to trade wholesome information, in which Wood communicated with Peters and a local conservative activist, Sharona Bishop, who helped organize the plan to copy the hard drives. So, by the way, I mean, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with Signal in the same way that there is something inherently wrong with cryptocurrency. But, and lots of people have lots of reasons to want to protect their privacy. But one, it keeps coming up in criminal situations. And two, it keeps coming up in criminal situations because they keep presenting evidence of people's incriminating texts on this super secret, protected, private, encrypted messaging app, which leads me to believe that, okay, if you are thinking, well, I can get away with this crime because I plan to plan it and discuss my plans with others in my conspiracy on Signal, I would just say to you, I don't know, I keep reading that they are presenting people's Signal messages as evidence in court against them and they're getting convicted, and I'm just wondering, how secure it really is, and why is it that the government keeps ending up with those messages when they find out that you're plotting against the government. Well, anyway, they do. So, they say of Wood, right, he knew all along. He says this Case, the lawyer, in closing statements. And how about that, by the way, a lawyer named Case. That's perfect. That's why he's in this text chat. Now, what happened when he was on the stand? I walked up, I showed, and he looked like he'd been hit with a 4x4. Okay. Well put. Everyone knows exactly what you mean. It worked great. Wood said he couldn't recall being part of the text message chat labeled Tech Team, but he did concede it included his cell phone number and username. But, with his permission, and was he reading it? Did he know what signal was? All unproven? Well, don't know what to do, except conclude that he says he didn't know. You say he did know. You can't prove that he's lying about it, so I guess, you're on shaky ground. Prosecutors urged the jury not to trust Bishop's testimony, noting the authenticity of the text chain hadn't been corroborated by anyone else, and investigators never found it on any of the devices seized from her, Peters, or Wood. If you believe Sharona Bishop, then we submit that you'll probably find Jerry Wood consented, Shapiro acknowledged to the jury. But, of course, if you don't believe her, and there's good reason not to, well, then you don't have to conclude that Jerry Wood consented. He says he didn't. The trial was closely watched because of its ties to broader election conspiracies. Brad Barker lives in Mesa County and regularly serves as a volunteer election judge. He's closely followed the case and said he was surprised she wasn't found guilty on all counts, but was pleased nonetheless. The jury did a good job in going through the counts, and I'm satisfied with the verdict, Barker said, adding that he's a little more confident in helping out at the polls this November. I guess as a result, that's good news. Hopefully both sides of this will be able to accept the verdict and not stir up too much trouble. As an election judge, that could make it difficult if it continues to be a problem here in Mesa County, and I just don't want that, Barker said in the hallway after the verdict. And, of course, Republicans will claim, well, that just shows that he's biased against us. He can't be an election law judge. He can. He's actually accepting the verdict of other, courts of competent jurisdiction and is required to. And I don't see how you can get around the fact that that requirement needs to be honored. And that's what he's doing. Well, anyway, where were we here? The group that represents Colorado's clerks expressed satisfaction with the verdict. Clerks across the state are pleased to see justice done today. Now, to remind you, Tina Peters was the clerk. Why doesn't the organization supporting clerks support Tina Peters? Because Tina Peters wasn't acting as a clerk in good faith at the time. It was, in other words, in the view of the organization representing people who are actually clerks, they say that was not an official act. Now, who are you going to believe? Clerks describing what they believe their job to be? Or judges who say, well, I don't know, maybe clerks don't know what they're talking about. I should be the judge of what is and is the official role of a clerk. Someone's got to make the decision. Anyway, clerks across the state are pleased to see justice done today. We take seriously our role as guardians of the best election process in the nation and are grateful to see the justice system hold those who would harm our elections accountable, said the association's executive director, Matt Crane, in a statement. Sentencing for the case set for October 3rd. So mark your calendars to see whether or not Tina Peters makes it to jail. Mark your calendar because my calendar is across the room. And I'll never remember past 11 o'clock to mark my calendar. Maybe I can. October 3rd. We'll keep an eye out for it. As I mentioned to you, the Washington Post also covered the story. I doubt very much whether we'll extract anything from that story that we didn't get out of the Colorado Public Radio story. But in case you're looking for it, I will include it in the roundup. Former Colorado official found guilty for role in election equipment tampering. Tina Peters, a former county clerk, was accused of helping copy election information after Trump lost the 2020 presidential election. That's the headline and subheader on the piece by Yvonne Wingett Sanchez and Patrick Marley. again, for the Washington Post. So, with that out of the way, we can move on to a couple other interesting pieces that I put aside. And, wow, let's see. Direction, please. Let's see. How about we go to this one? We'll stay in the courtrooms. NPR, National Public Radio, not to be confused with Colorado Public Radio, has got this fun tidbit for us. Elon Musk is bringing lawsuits, if you can believe it, to Texas. Why Texas? Well, this is another one of those places where he was pretty sure he could get the judge of choice by going to the Northern District of Texas to file his latest crazy lawsuits and get Judge Reed O'Connor. Now, why is he suing? I don't know. Why is he? We'll get to that, I'm sure, in the piece. Again, NPR, Bobby Allen, responsible for the piece. Elon Musk is bringing lawsuits to Texas. Why is he bringing them to Texas in particular? One, to get Reed O'Connor. Why is he so happy with Reed O'Connor? He's a conservative Republican, yes, but also Reed O'Connor is an owner of some considerable, apparently, number of Tesla shares. And he keeps hearing these cases. Not only is Elon Musk bringing him there because he's getting favorable verdicts from him, but he keeps bringing things to him over and over again. And Reed O'Connor, knowing that he owns Tesla stock, keeps agreeing to hear the cases and go forward, even though normally a judge would say, no, actually it would be best for everyone if I recused myself. But of course, the whole point of Reed O'Connor being a judge in the Northern District of Texas is so that there won't be anyone else to hear the cases. The whole thing is meant to corrupt that system. So he hasn't recused himself from these cases because he's meant to take cases in which he has a conflict of interest, or at least to take cases in which he will hand over a predetermined verdict on behalf of his favored political ideology. Billionaire Elon Musk seems to have found a new favorite federal judge, Reed O'Connor in Fort Worth, Texas. Musk's social media company, X, and I'm not certain now whether or not Reed O'Connor is in one of these single judge districts or not. In Fort Worth, it would be kind of hard to pull that off, but let's see. Musk has filed 2 major lawsuits against groups he sees as antagonists, and O'Connor is presiding over both of them by some strange magic, I guess, even though none of the parties is based in Texas. So maybe a bit of a jurisdiction problem there. So far, O'Connor has delivered stunningly pro-Musk decisions, which have gained widespread attention. What has garnered less attention is O'Connor's investments in Tesla. Between $15,000 and $50,000 worth of Tesla stock, as a matter of fact, according to his most recent publicly available financial disclosure filing. That investment has fueled questions, as it must, over O'Connor's fairness as a judge since the outcome of the suits filed by Musk's Twitter activity could impact his business empire as a whole. And so therefore Tesla as well. Get it? It is absolutely reasonable to question his impartiality in a case where the party and interest is a principal in a company the judge owns stock in, says James Sample, a professor who specializes in judicial ethics at Hofstra University's law school. Others have questioned whether Musk's legal team intentionally aimed to take their cases to O'Connor's court, something known as forum shopping, in hopes of a sympathetic outcome, or even better, judge shopping, when they know that there's only one judge in these districts. I'm not certain that that's the case with O'Connor, but his name does keep coming up in judge shopping discussions. That practice is controversial but not illegal. Federal rules dictating where a lawsuit can be filed are broad, said Jennifer Ahern, senior counsel for the Brennan Center's Judiciary Program. Now, they're taking advantage of those openings in a way that is not common, Ahern said. A reason why you don't see that more is because you don't often find both judges, or rather, both judges willing to accept these kinds of situations and parties willing to accept the wrath of the judges for doing that. But this judge, according to Ahern, appears to be the opposite, willing to take on cases in a Texas district that would not ordinarily land there. O'Connor, a member of the influential conservative legal group, the Federalist Society, was appointed by former President George W. Bush in 2007. He has developed a reputation for handing down legal victories to Republicans, notably ruling against the Affordable Care Act and striking down federal gun regulations. Now, O'Connor has taken on 2 cases from another conservative who happens to be the richest person in the world, who's using O'Connor's court to attack perceived enemies. O'Connor did not return multiple requests for comment. Musk did not either. What's going on? Musk's suit is aimed at, I guess, and is in fact draining Media Matters of cash. O'Connor is now in charge of 2 of Musk's most high-profile legal crusades. One of the cases, filed this week by Musk's Twitter, or X, claims a consortium of advertisers that yanked ads from the platform illegally conspired against the social media site. The repercussions of the case were almost instantaneous. Fearing that the lawsuit would drain its finances, the World Federation of Advertisers said on Friday that it would dissolve its brand safety initiative, known as the Global Alliance for Responsible Media. Why is that their reaction? That's crazy. Brands Unilever, Mars, CVS, and Orsted are also named as defendants. Again, the basis of the suit is Elon Musk says it's illegal for brands to, I guess, collectively say, we don't want to advertise in this platform. It's unsafe for us. It makes us look like we support Nazis, which is what it does say about them. And they didn't want that. And he says it's illegal for you not to want that. It's a novel theory. You're going to need a very sympathetic judge to get anywhere with that one. So they found one, and they went there. The second lawsuit was filed in November by Twitter, claiming liberal watchdog group Media Matters released a deceptive, in their view, a deceptive report about major advertisers appearing alongside pro-Nazi posts. The suit cited contract violations and business disparagement, a legal term for derogatory statements that harm a company. The cost of turning over vast numbers of documents in the case, a process known as discovery, has already cost the nonprofit of about 100 people millions of dollars and forced it to lay off about 14 staffers. So Twitter probably and Musk happy about that result, even if they get nowhere with the suit. That's the dangerous part of it. Lawyers for Media Matters wrote in an email to Musk's legal team that the document production has so far been expansive and intrusive, comparing the efforts to harassment, according to legal filings, which show Musk's legal team requesting the personal bank records of rank-and-file employees. 5 months ago, lawyers for Media Matters asked O'Connor to rule on what is often the first major hurdle of a lawsuit, a motion to dismiss, determining whether Musk's suit has any merit or not. O'Connor greenlit the discovery process, but he still has not ruled on the lawsuit's merits. Allegations of forum shopping have, of course, been lodged at Musk. Like with the Media Matters case, neither Twitter/X, which is listed in the suits as a Nevada corporation, nor any of the defendants are based in Texas. But Musk's legal team justified the filing of the Media Matters case in Texas by saying the nonprofit routinely contacts Texans, asking them to subscribe to the group's content, and that in the second case, the advertisers who were leaving Twitter have a substantial volume of business in Texas. They sell Mars bars in Texas, so that's enough. Forum shopping accusations have recently come under scrutiny in the Northern District of Texas, in part because the district is distinct. Now we'll find out what's going on. In most parts of the country, lawsuits are randomly assigned to judges, but in Northern Texas, judges take on suits based on which division of the district they are filed in. That can allow parties to almost cherry-pick a judge, according to Ahern, with the Brennan Center for Justice. It's particularly extreme, Ahearn said of forum shopping in northern Texas. It has become a problem for the judiciary in a way that hasn't been in the past. Something else that makes the cases unique in Texas is that laws that protect people and groups from meritless lawsuits do not apply in Texas's federal courts under a 2019 appeals court decision. That effectively means that if Musk loses the cases, he will not have to pay the defendants legal fees, as he would in many states. That seems like a glaring loophole, don't you think? Next up, records say Judge O'Connor is a Tesla investor. That's the other issue that's raised concern among legal ethics experts. O'Connor appears to be an investor in Tesla, another company owned by Musk. It's unclear whether O'Connor has sold his investment of up to $50,000 in Tesla stock because the judge's disclosure form covering the 2023 calendar year is not yet publicly available. He has requested a filing extension, according to an official with the Administrative Office of U.S. Courts who was not authorized to speak on the record. In May, an NPR investigation had found that disclosure forms for judges are often missing or late for various reasons. As a result, potential conflicts of interest like stock holdings or even gifts of luxury travel, for instance, are hidden from public view. Media Matters lawyers have seized on O'Connor's disclosure, saying rulings on what evidence the judge allows in the case could impact Tesla's stock price. They argue that testimony or documents revealing Musk's decision-making process could be made public. Such evidence has the potential to directly harm investor confidence in Musk and thereby drive down Tesla's share price. This is not speculation. History has shown that when Musk speaks, Tesla's stock price responds, Media Matters lawyer Andrew LeGrand wrote in a June filing. Josh Blackman, an adjunct scholar at the right-leaning Cato Institute, had a different view, saying the case before O'Connor involves Twitter, not Tesla. If the judge owned stock in Twitter, if it were a public company, then it's an easy case, Blackman said. It's a novel case because it requires a chain of inferences to get from Twitter to Tesla. Although, Musk does everything he can to make that chain of inference every day. But judicial ethics scholar Sample insists, Sample? I don't remember who that is, but okay. I hope that's not like a placeholder. Sample name here, right? Okay. Was that named earlier? But this other judicial ethics scholar insists the appearance of bias alone is enough to warrant O'Connor to step aside from the case. He said, let another competent judge handle these cases without serious questions surrounding them. And then yesterday, after all of this was done, there was briefly circulating, I think Chris Geidner had spotted and circulated what looked to be a recusal letter from Judge O'Connor. And then I thought I saw Chris saying, well, I might get rid of that because we don't... Oh, okay. So he got rid of another tweet, not tweet, but... that I must have speculated on what drove O'Connor. So I don't know, maybe his recusal is in here. But yesterday there was a letter released on his letterhead saying simply that I hereby recuse myself from the above numbered case. Please see to it that it's assigned to another judge per the usual procedure. So is it a yes or is it a no? We'll have to look around some more to see if we can figure that one out. It would be a good thing if he did, in fact, recuse himself from it. And it would be, evidence that he acknowledges that it's been improper for him to be handling some of these cases all along. So there we go. Just something to take a look at. By the way, now we can sort of use that to segue elsewhere. One of Chris Geidner's other messages here. I don't know what it was that he deleted, but he acknowledges deleting a post in this thread because I don't know what's going on in Reed O'Connor's head, thankfully. What I can say is that as of now, O'Connor remains sitting on the Twitter versus Media Matters case anyway. Maybe he is recused from the lawsuit against the other organizations, the advertisers, but not recused from the Media Matters case, at least not at the time of this posting. So we can stick with Elon Musk as a topic, make a good segue here to share this story with you in the few minutes we have remaining. The Elon Musk-Donald Trump interview on X, Twitter, started with an immediate tech disaster. That part you know. You heard about the tech disaster. What is new here is that Musk was, of course, well, this was not new. Musk was claiming there was a hacker attack on Twitter, but The Verge, whose reporting we will be reading, is told, or has been told, that there was not a big attack. It was just plain bad work on their part. And there are insiders saying that it was a lie designed to cover up for what kind of tech disaster, I don't know. But maybe Gabby Del Valle and Kylie Robinson, the reporters on this piece, did get some indication of it. They, at the very least, got some indication that it was a lie of convenience to say that there was a hacker attack. Elon Musk's conversation, and that they enclose in scare quotes, with former President Donald Trump got off to a rocky start. It's a good idea to close that in conversation in scare quotes. The interview, which they also should have done that too, which was hosted on X Spaces. Not SpaceX, but X Spaces, because there's no relationship between different Musk businesses. That's something that probably ought to come up in the pleadings down there in the Northern District of Texas to counter the, Cato Institute person's claim that, well, they're two different companies. It is weird that it's SpaceX and X, and I don't know, and the same guy runs both, and yada, yada. Anyway, the interview, hosted on Twitter/X Spaces and scheduled to begin at 8 p.m. on Monday night, crashed immediately and didn't begin until 42 minutes later. By the way, you remember how bitter and angry Trump appeared to be when he was interviewed at the National Association of Black Journalists Forum and was angered by what he said were technical problems that were hampering him, and that basically he, pulled out the same thing as always. Well, everybody's low IQ, and that's why they couldn't make the technology work. But I'm going to talk to a genius, high IQ Elon Musk, who also couldn't make his technology work, but somehow escaped the criticism. Those who did to manage to get into the space, including several Verge staffers, said it kicked off with lo-fi techno, music, I guess, playing from Trump's account for roughly 30 minutes. 18 minutes after the conversation was supposed to begin, Musk claimed that X was the target of a massive DDoS attack. And I still have not figured out how you're supposed to say that out loud. Who cares? I'm not a hacker, and I don't care that much. But he said he was the target of a massive attack that had made it impossible for the space to proceed as planned. The rest of Twitter appears to be working normally, however, and a source at the company confirmed to The Verge that there wasn't actually a denial of service attack. Another Twitter staffer said there was a 99%, that's in quotes, 99% chance that Musk was lying about an attack. Here is the embedded tweet in which Musk makes that claim and says, worst case, we'll proceed with a smaller number of live listeners and post the conversation later. In a series of follow-up posts on Twitter, Musk claimed the company tested the system with 8 million concurrent listeners on Monday, around the time that the interview began. Twitter said there were 915,000 people listening to the space, should have been well within their tolerances if he had been telling the truth about that. Musk repeated the DDoS claim when the space finally began around 8:40 p.m. Eastern Time. As this massive attack illustrates, there's a lot of opposition to people just hearing what President Trump has to say, he said. The interview's failure to get off the ground was reminiscent, of course, of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' 2023 announcement on Twitter that he was running for president, which also began with technical difficulties. At the time, Musk attributed the problems to overloaded servers. And I guess he didn't think he could get away with that excuse again, and instead said, yeah, it was hackers, but insiders say, no, probably not. He's probably lying about this. All right, thought I might put that on the record, and I thought you might enjoy hearing that. Only seconds left to go in today's program, and as a matter of fact, so not worth, I guess, getting into anything else. We certainly can't fit it, except to say this. I guess I'll use this opportunity to sneak this in. I don't know where the information is coming from, and I don't really particularly care. The Daily Beast has got it. There is now a second corroborating photo. J.D. Vance, I'm sure, I don't know any specific instances, but I'm sure among the Republicans who have been hypercritical of the dangers, the dangers of drag and drag performances and drag story hours to our impressionable youth. And, of course, as is usually the case with these kinds of idiots, there are photos of J.D. Trump in drag. Is he a drag performer, a drag queen? Does he sing on stage? No. Was he just screwing around and going to a, Halloween party or something, dressed in drag? Don't know. Maybe. But there it is. A second photo alleged to show J.D. Vance in drag has been posted online, according to the Daily Beast. And why the hell not talk about that? Except for the fact that I haven't played our outro music, which means we're way late, which means we got to get the hell out of here and clear the decks for Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, which comes up next right here on Netroots Radio. But, of course, you'll want to spend your time talking instead about J.D. Vance being caught in these pictures. A second image, apparently, same outfit, so probably from the same day. Still lots of eyeliner here. Maybe that's where you got the eyeliner idea. Images of J.D. Vance, allegedly dressed as a woman. I mean, he is, if that's him, in a blonde wig, posted to Twitter, by the way. The post reads simply, second photo has hit my inbox. It appears to show a man in drag wearing the same wig and costume as an earlier image, said to have been snapped by a Yale classmate in 2012. Spokesperson for Donald Trump's running mate did not deny that the first photo was authentic. So there you go. The second photo shows the subject looking down at the camera, hands behind their neck in a bit of a pose, holding up the wig hair there, and a little weird, like striking a sexy pose, and or supposedly sexy pose, or maybe he was flirting with the couch across the room. No one really knows. But Justice Putnam may have an idea of what was going on. Is it part of his report? Well, I'll take a gander at what he's got listed for today and let you know. Okay, gander. No. Properly so.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
He does, of course, note that Trump is getting crazier as the time goes on and making more and more increasingly bizarre claims. Let's see what he's got listed there. And then, what else have we got here? Oh, fresh off an Olympic bronze medal, basketball star Derek Ahamby filed a federal lawsuit against the WNBA. Let's find out why next.